Welcome to Highline Excel 2013 class video number 18. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, Business 214 week 4, click on the link below the video. Hey, this week our videos are all going to be about lookup formulas, and we're going to start off with the most commonly used lookup function, VLOOKUP. We're going to see 11 examples that will help you get up to speed with how to use VLOOKUP. Now, later in the week, we'll see some other examples for VLOOKUP, and we'll also see some other important lookup functions like index and match and choose and others. All right, we're going to start by going to the sheet examples. Now, why are lookup formulas and functions so common? Because everybody needs to look stuff up. We got a few examples on this sheet. Hey, what about invoicing? We need to look up the product quad and get the price. Well, we would look at this quad, race through this column, find a match, and then jump over, get this price, bring it back over here, $35.95. That's an invoicing example. Now, most tables are orientated vertically. That means you look something up in the first column. That's why the most common lookup function is VLOOKUP. The V is for vertical. There's also HLOOKUP. Now, that's less common. This is the more common vertical table. You might see a horizontally orientated table. This table, we're looking up part number, and we might jump to a subsequent row to get the product name, the range flight for this boomerang, or the price. Another important aspect of this type of lookup here, it's an exact match. So when our formula looks at quad, it races through this column and tries to find exactly QUAD, an exact match. Another type of lookup situation is called approximate match. Now, this is a commission example. Joe has had $8,000 in sales, and from this commission paid column, we need to figure out what the commission is. Well, the lookup function is going to look up 8,000, but notice there's no exact match. We're going to be doing an approximate match. This category right here spans greater than or equal to 7,000 all the way up to, but not including that 10,000. So this 8,000 fits in this category right here. So when lookup looks up doing approximate match, it'll get the $250 and bring it back to this cell. Another example of a table and a lookup situation, hey, taxes. This table is straight from the IRS. So for this category right here, in order to fit in this category, you have to have over $2,038, but not over $6,304. So we might need to look up the tax rate or the taxes paid from previous brackets. We'll see all of these examples in this video. Still another example, oh so common in human resources. You're looking up an employee ID. You might need to return the last name, the first name, the email, the phone number. And in fact, some employee tables go on 30, 40 columns with all sorts of information. All right, so we have exact matches, approximate matches. We're going to go over to the sheet VExact, VLOOKUP exact. I'm going to click on this sheet. All right, here's some notes, and we will go through these notes in our examples. You can go ahead and read those later. Here's our situation. Hey, this is that table we just saw. We're looking at boomerang names. These are products we're selling. We might need to get the product number, the flight range out. So for a sunshine boomerang, it has a flight range out of 30 meters and then a price of $18.95. All right, so our first example, we're going to look at what's called exact match. Now, exact match is a linear search from top to bottom. So when the formula, the VLOOKUP function, looks up quad, it will actually start at the top and say, are you equal to quad? False. Are you equal to quad? False. Are you equal to quad? False. Are you equal to quad? True. Then it will know that the fourth row in this table, and notice I'm in row 15 in the spreadsheet, but it's the table. It's from the point of view of the table. So the VLOOKUP function will know that quad and all of its data is in the fourth row. Now, if we need to get price, 1, 2, 3, 4 the price for this product is in the fourth column. It has nothing to do with the fact that D is the fourth letter in the alphabet. It has to do with the size of the table. Now, let's go ahead and try this. Now notice, how would you do this by hand? You'd put the name quad in your brain. You would know where the table is. You'd find the quad. And if we're getting price, you'd know to go 1, 2, 3, 4, get it, and bring it back to the cell. If you know how to do it by hand, you know how to do VLOOKUP. Because guess what? Equals VL, and there's only one function that has a V and an L tab. The VLOOKUP function does it just like we would do it by hand. It needs to have the lookup value to put in its brain. So it's looking up quad, comma. You need to tell the VLOOKUP where the table is, just like you would know where the lookup table on a piece of paper is on your desk. The VLOOKUP needs to know where it is. So you highlight the whole table, and that table must have in the first column the thing it's going to try and match from its lookup value. Must be in the first column. Any of these subsequent columns, we can get stuff and retrieve it and bring it back to the cell. Comma. Just like you would know to read and see the price and then pick something from the fourth column, you have to program that into VLOOKUP. What is the column index number? That means which one of these columns, 1, 2, 3, or 4, has the thing you want to get and bring back to the cell. It's 4 column, comma. Now we have two different types of lookups. Approximate is for taxes, commissions, and other similar situations. Exact is for when you want to find exactly whatever's in the lookup value. I have QUAD. That's what I want to find. Now, it's kind of arbitrary. They had to pick something that's here and here to tell the VLOOKUP, hey, I'm doing approximate or I'm doing false. They chose true for approximate and false for exact match. However, there's other lookup functions like match function, which also has an exact match and approximate match. But that function uses 0 instead of false and 1 instead of true. So I tend to use 0 when I want exact match. 0, close parentheses. I'm using 0 or false if you want. You can use false. I'm using 0 to tell, hey, VLOOKUP, I want you to look up exactly quad. Close parentheses and Control Enter. That is so cool. It went and got it right there. Now let's try this. I'm going to type Bellin, and just like that, what did it do? Well, it's doing exact match, so it started at the top and says, are you equal to Bellin? Yes, true. So it just stopped, and then it went over the fourth column, got it, and brought it back. If I type try fly, it actually went linear through and checked each one until it got to the try fly. It jumped over to the fourth column, got the 495, and brought it back. Now, that's exact match. What if you type something that's not in the list? Because it'll go all the way through, and when it gets to the bottom, it's going to go, hey, I didn't find it. Well, funfly is a great boomerang. Oh, but it's not in our list. So what did it do? Well, actually, VLOOKUP was polite. It says not available. So not available is a good thing. It means, hey, that's not in your list. Oh, I better try again. I forgot. It's actually try fly that I wanted. So instantly it goes and gets that. Now we want to talk about duplicates. I'm going to type quad here. All right, so there's a quad. Right now, quad is getting 35.95. But get this, you can only have one unique lookup value in your column for each item. Well, if there was lots of quads, how would it know what to look up? Well, here's the deal. It only finds the first one. So I'm typing quad in cell A13. And now look at that. It got 28.95. It will never get to the second one. It always, when it finds it, it stops. It always gets the first one. So with dupes, it's only getting the first one. It will ignore all other duplicates. Now I'm going to Control Z. All right, so we have our VLOOKUP. Hey, guess what? This is like a line item in an invoice. We had our product, There's our price. We looked it up. We have our units. So now we can do our formula. Equals units times price. Now in this particular situation, we have no chance of getting a rounding error because we have pennies times integers. So we can simply multiply. That is totally amazing. It totally automates our invoicing. So if I change this to Bellin, tab, tab, and I change this to 10, instantly we get our total. Control Z, Z. Now, as we saw, if I type fun, which is not one of our boomerangs, we get an NA. Control Z. Sometimes that's going to be the situation, and we want to build robust formulas. So let's just try equals VLOOKUP, VL. There's only one function with VL. Tab. I'm going to get my lookup value, comma, within my table, comma, I'm looking up part number this time. So 1, 2, it's in the second column, so I type a 2. And I'm doing exact match. So instead of false, I'm putting 0. You can put 0 or false, whichever one you want. I like 0. Close parentheses and control. What? NA? Oh, there's a spelling error. Well, sometimes instead of an NA, you want your formula to be more polite and just say, hey, not in list, or spelling error, or something like that. F2, we can use the if error. Now, equals if error. There's the if. We saw how to use that before. There's if error. And there's a new function in 2013, IFNA. We'll look at that one in just a second. Actually, if error is new in 2007. Any error that VLOOKUP spits out, if error will pick it up, that value right there. It's either going to deliver whatever the formula is delivering if it's not an error. If the value is an error, then you come to the end, comma, and the value if error. I'm going to put not in list. Control Enter, not in list. Now we can immediately that's our prompt, right? We immediately say, oh, it's not in the list. Well, I better go check, or I better check the spelling or something. Now I can fix it, and instantly it looks up the product number. Now before 2007. This is what you had to do. If I click inside the logical test, notice that's ISNA. That function's been around for a long time. We'll look at IFNA in just a second. But we looked at all the is functions last week. Is functions are logical functions, and they always return true or false. So is function is looking at VLOOKUP. When it returns an NA, ISNA returns to the logical test a true. If it's true, the value of true gets dumped into the cell not in list. Otherwise, oh, you have to run the VLOOKUP 2 times. That's why if you have 2007 or later, it's much more convenient to use if error. Now, if error will catch any of the errors. If you wanted simply to check for NA, now, we don't have a situation here, but sometimes you're doing division with the result of a lookup, and you want to see the divide by 0 error. So if you wanted to only catch the NAs, oh, this great new 2013 function. Notice value and then value if NA. So it's similar to the if error. Control V, we put our whatever formula or function is either going to give us an answer or an error. We come to the end, and then if it's an error, in this case it's only an NA error. So I'll put not in list, in double quotes, close parentheses. So if I actually cheated and went equals 1 divided by 0, right? So this says not in list. Well, of course divide by 0 is not in list, but this one shows it. And sometimes that's what you want. So that's just checking for NA errors. Control Z. Now notice the if error allows us to make an error in this cell, and then later it gives us a message. If it's not in the list, right? How about instead of waiting for the person to make an error, we just limit the type of data they could put into the cell? In fact, what do we want? We only want the correctly spelled names from the first column of our table. In that case, we can, for the lookup value that the VLOOKUP uses, we can use data validation list. Now watch this. We want to drop down in this cell right here that will only show each one of the properly spelled product names. So here's how we do it. Click in cell A31, Data Ribbon, Data Tools Group, Data Validation, Data Validation. Now, since 2007, there's been an Alt keyboard shortcut that's kind of long. In earlier versions, 2003 and before, Alt DL works. And guess what? All of the old Alt keys still work. So we can click in cell A31 and do Alt DL. Now, the default setting is any value. That means it will allow any value. All 17 billion cells have that default setting, but we don't want that. I'm going to hit Tab, and then I'm going to hit L for list, Tab. That tabs me to the source. I'm going to scroll up and check this out. I'm going to get only the first column. That has only the product names. In cell dropdown, click OK. And now, boom, just like that, I'm limiting what the user puts into the cell. Only the correctly spelled items from that lookup column. Now, let's go ahead and finish our formula. Based on our data validation equals VL tab. I'm looking up, hey, I know that's going to be good because it's coming from the table, comma, the table, the whole table, Control backspace. Comma. Oh, wait a second. Now we're looking up the range flight of the boomerang. So I'm going to scroll up. 1, 2, 3. So it's the third column. So for the column index 3, comma 0, close parentheses. And there I have my range. So the Carlota flies 30 meters out. The quad, same with the quad. The Majestic Butte flies out 35 meters. So data validation and VLOOKUP together, absolutely a powerful combo. Now, let's look at a defined name. And what we'd like to do is in our VLOOKUP function, instead of highlighting the table, we'll use a defined name. So let's scroll up and we'll highlight our table without field names. We'll come up to the name box. Click in the name box. We'll use the name product table, no spaces. Enter, and we'll test it. Click somewhere else and then use our drop down to test it. We can even go up to formula name managers or use the keyboard Control F3. Looking good. Now we can use that in our formulas. All right, so equals VL tab, left arrow, comma, PRD, down arrow, tab. Another way, if you forget your name, totally use the F3 key. F3 is paste name. Double click and it puts it right in. So that's our table, comma, our column index. We're looking up price. That's in the fourth, so 4 for our column, comma, exact match. We're using 0 or false. I'm using 0. Control Enter. Oh, that is great. So if I use my drop down, it works like magic. Now, let's scroll up and look at our first example. This was an invoicing example. We want to see 2 more invoicing examples, since doing invoicing in Excel is quite common, and VLOOKUP is the way you can look up your prices. Notice over here we did a formula. Units times, oh, that cell with the price. But what's in that cell? VLOOKUP. So sometimes you want to do a total cell and you don't want an individual cell for price. No problem. Many VLOOKUP formulas don't deliver a value to the cell, but instead deliver a value to the formula. So you ready? Equals VLOOKUP. We're going to look up Majestic Butte, comma, in our products table, F3 down arrow, enter, comma, price is 4. that's the fourth column, comma, exact match 0. If we control enter, we can see it gets the price, F2. F2 always puts it in edit mode, puts your cursor at the end, which is convenient here because I go times left arrow. Now look at my cursor. I'm trying to be efficient, but I was in edit mode. If you look down here in the status bar, it'll always tell you the status of edit mode. Now think about this. The F2 key is what puts it into edit mode. So watch down here, edit. If I hit the F2, it goes to enter and then back to edit. You need to be in enter to get your cursor to move when you hit your arrow to a cell. Now here's the deal. If I hit F2 and I'm looking down here at edit, that means sometimes people want to arrow through to change something. So no problem. If you're done arrowing, you hit, and you could see down here, F2 to get back. And now when I do my left arrow, it goes and gets it. All right, there's our formula. Control enter. That is amazing. All in one formula. Now, let's run Formula Evaluator and prove that VLOOKUP is actually delivering a number to the formula. Formulas. Formula auditing group, evaluate formula, or Alt-MV. Now, I'm just going to hit enter and watch this. Enter. So VLOOKUP got the majestic beaut. It's looking at the table now. Now VLOOKUP will return 3195 right to that formula. Multiply times 3. The total is 9585. Escape. Pretty cool. VLOOKUP delivers a number to a formula. Now, let's do a comprehensive invoice example. So here we want, here's a line item. Lots of line items on an invoice. We could sell as many boomerangs and units as we want. And we want the price, the individual line total, and then the subtotal for all of the boomerangs sold. Now, let's put all that we know together here. I would like to highlight all these cells and have a drop down in each cell for data validation. So Alt-D, L, Tab, L, Tab. The source, I probably should have given it a defined name, but I'm going to highlight that range, A12 to 19, click OK. So now look at this, each cell. That's cool. So if we use this as our template, right, we can just start off with blank and select, 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 and our product names will be there. Now let's come over to price. Hey, we got to look up. So VL tab, arrow, arrow, comma, F3 down arrow, enter, the product table name, comma, the price is in the fourth column, comma, I'm doing exact match, close parentheses. Control enter. Copy it down. Oh, and this. Look at this. Now what are we going to do about this? Well, our invoice is a lot of times going to have empties here, and I certainly don't want those NAs there. If I'm going to print this out, that'd look terrible. Well, just like last week when we studied the if function, the null text string, which is the formula syntax that says, hey, show nothing, that'll come to our rescue. Now notice I have all of the cells highlighted because I just copied it down. The light colored cell is the active cell. I'm going to hit F2. Now I'll edit this formula and then repopulate it into all the cells. Hey, we're in 2013. If NA. So if NA, we'll check for an NA, and that's what VLOOKUP spits out. There's the value. Come to the end, comma, and there's value if NA. We put our double quote. That's a null text string. Close parentheses. Control enter. That is beautiful. So right here, if NA does not see an NA, so it lets VLOOKUP run. But here, it sees the NA and dumps a null text string. Now remember, the null text string, it displays nothing, but there is something in the cell. It's a text string with 0 length. But let's test it. Come over here. I'm going to say quad, and instantly, boom, we get our formula delivering the price. I'm going to Control ZZ. Now let's come over and do our total column. Now I'm going to use the round function here, even though we're never going to get a rounding error because we got pennies and integers. But sometimes when you're building a template, you don't know if someone will ever have partial pennies. So I'm going to use the round, because if we don't use the round and someone has partial pennies, anytime you're multiplying or dividing decimals, you run the error with money of having extraneous pennies. Those extraneous pennies could, in subsequent formulas like sum function, get the wrong answer. So I'm going to be careful here and do my multiplying inside the round. Comma, penny, you use a 2. That says, hey, round to the penny. Close parentheses. Notice we're multiplying here and then using the round function. Control Enter and drag it down. Now, that's a value error. Over here we got an NA. VLOOKUP said not available. Value's different. Why are we getting a value error? Because guess what? That empty cell in a formula will be treated as 0. But that's a null text string, and it is a thing. It's text. You are not allowed with multiplication to multiply a number, 0, times text. So that's why we get the value error. In this case, let's use if error. And the same thing, we'll put a null text string. Hey, it will say show nothing. Control Enter. And I'm going to copy this down. Oh, that is beautiful. Now let's test it. We're the salesperson. We're trying to sell these boomerangs. And the quad is the best freestyle boomerang ever, so I'm going to sell 10 of them. The whole team needs them. Oh, that's looking good. Now we can come down here. Alt equals. That adds them up. And so there is our invoice. If we delete, instantly everything is blank. If we put them back, we have our calculations and our total. Invoicing. Now, let's look at one more example before we go talk about approximate match. Oh, HLOOKUP. Well, if you know how to use VLOOKUP, you'll know how to use HLOOKUP. Equals HL tab. Lookup value. Hey, that's the same as for VLOOKUP. Comma. The table array. The first row has the item that's being looked up. If we do exact match, it goes through each one until it finds a match. Comma. Not column number. It says row number. The index number, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Our price is in the 4th row, so we put a 4. Comma, and then 0 for exact match. So HLOOKUP, occasionally you might run into it, but not normal lookup situations. All right, and then we can certainly change this, and instantly we get our correct answer. Now, we've talked about exact match. Let's go look at approximate match. Click on Approximate, and here on this sheet we have some notes about approximate match. And our first example, we'll do our commissions example. Actually, I'm going to highlight and do the keyboard shortcut for zoom to selection, Alt-WG. Now, approximate match. Well, just imagine if you were the VLOOKUP right here, if you were looking up 7,598 and it was exact match, it would find no match. But luckily, we can do approximate match. Here's what VLOOKUP would do. Takes the number in its brain, it races through the first column of the table, and when it bumps into the first number bigger, it jumps back a row. And that's how it knows which row to get the data and bring back to the cell. So for Sue, the rating would be very good. The commission he earned would be $250. Now, technically, VLOOKUP doesn't race through, because then it would be just like exact match, checking every single one. It does a binary search, which successively divides the table in half and checks the one in the middle, which actually gets really fast search results. So for large data sets, that approximate match can go really fast compared to exact match. That's why if we go back onto the exact match sheet and look up here, if we had sorted this column, we could use approximate match. The key is for approximate match that the first column has to be sorted. Now, all the other records in the table also have to be sorted. We saw how to do sorting earlier in this class. But think about this. If we didn't have the requirement that the first column is sorted, when we look this up, we'd race through, find the first one is bigger, and jump back. we'd get the wrong row. So it has to be sorted. That way, when it goes through, it runs into the first one that's bigger and jumps back. Now, another way to think of these categories is this. The number in the first column is included for this category. The numbers that fit in this category are greater than or equal to 7,000 and less than 10,000. It'll always be greater than or equal to the number on this row, less than the next one. So up here for the par category, greater than or equal to 1,000 and less than 2,500. Now let's come down here and see how to do our formula. Equals VL tab, left arrow, comma, the table, first column sorted ascending, smallest to biggest, comma, our rating is in the second column, 2. The default is approximate, so I'm going to close parentheses. Now, I need to think about the cell references here. When I copy over to the side, I need it to be locked on the sale. So across the columns, I need the cursor touching B21, and then I hit F4 1, 2, 3 times, lock the B, but not the 21. Now, when I copy it down, I need it to move from row 21 to 22, 23, so no $sign in front of the 21. Now, this whole range needs to be locked in all directions, so I click on the screen tip and hit F4. Control Enter. Now, I'm going to copy it just over one for now. Put this in to edit mode, F2, and change the 2 to a 3. Oh, commissions is in the third column, so change it to a 3. Control Shift 4 to format it. Now we want to talk about the limits for approximate lookup, just like we did for exact. What if the number that is here is less than the first one? Minus 2. It gives us an NA. Anytime the lookup value is less than the first one, see, it can't find one bigger than it, right? So it returns NA. That's why usually for commissions and tax and grade tables, you usually want to start with a 0, right? Then it incorporates all the possible numbers. In some cases, you start at a different number. But for us, I'm going to Control Z. We would never have a negative number here, but that's good to know. If the number is smaller than the first one, it returns NA. What about if it's bigger? Let's copy this down. Okay, so here we have one that is bigger. Always is the case. When it races through and it can't find one bigger, it just sticks to the last one. So the only problem is when you have something smaller. Now it looks like everything's working. Come to the last cell, F2. Looking good. So Gigi gets excellent and 700. Kim gets subpar and 0. Looking good. So approximate match. We looked up a number value in a sorted column and returned rating and commission paid. Now the tax example is next. We'll come back to that in just a moment. I want to skip to the third example. Oh, grading. So here, if we click in C46, we need a VLOOKUP to look up our percentages and be able to copy it down. Here's one problem with grading tables. Usually in the syllabus, we list the biggest percentage and decimal grade at the top, right? And that goes all the way down to the bottom. But that won't work for an approximate match lookup table, because it's got to be sorted smallest to biggest. So you actually have to flip your table. If you go down to the bottom of this table, there's that 94. So the biggest one is at the bottom. All right, so now we can simply do our VLOOKUP equals VL tab. Hey, we're going to look up the percentage score. And by the way, these are percentage scores. It's just as easy to have the total score and have the total score in your first column of your grade lookup table. I've actually done it both ways over the many years. All right, so we're going to look this up, relative cell reference within the table. Control Shift right arrow, down arrow, F4. Comma, and the decimal grade is in the second column. So 2, we absolutely don't need to put that fourth argument in. The default is approximate match. Control Enter. double click and send it down. All right, so let's go look. Let's do a couple of these manually and see if this is working. 88.6. Race through the first column, 88. So 88. Oh, so there it is. There's the first one bigger, so it jumps back and takes that. 3.4, and sure enough, that's what it's got. 66.3. 66.3, it races through. It jumps into the first one that's bigger, 66.45. Jumps back, it gets the 1, brings it back here. How about this 94? Wait a second. 94, well, that would come racing down the column. It's equal to the last one. So anything equal to or bigger than should be getting a 4. So what's going on here? Well, I don't know. I'd go back up here. You know, maybe we highlighted the wrong table, meaning not all the rows to 89. That would give me this one right here. Oh, no, it's looking at the right one. Oh, you know what the problem is? Number formatting. Don't get tricked by number formatting. These are percentages. Looks like only 1 decimal showing. Be sure and go up and try to increase the decimals. Oh, 93.99. So what did it do? VLOOKUP raced through this column. It bumped into the first one bigger and jumped back 1 row. So that is the correct grade. We just didn't have the number displaying correctly. Remember, formulas don't look at the number formatting. They look at the underlying number. So it wasn't looking at the appearance of 94%. It was looking at that 93.99. All right, so that's our second example for approximate. Let's scroll up here. Control roll, control roll. Now this is a typical tax table. You get this straight from the IRS. The problem with this IRS table is for this category right here, it says over. Well, if it's over 2038, that means that number is not included for this category. So we cannot use this as our first column. Look at this. It says over this, but not over. So that means the bigger number is included here. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to trick it. We're going to add, because for our possible earnings, the only possible thing above 2038 is 2038 and a penny. So I'm going to go ahead, and this one's 0. 0 is going to be the first value there. But this one will be equals plus 0.01. Just a penny. We're going to add a penny. And this will be our extra column here. So this will be our lookup column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we want tax from the previous bracket, 5th column. Rate, 4th column. All right, so let's see if we can do this. Tax from the previous bracket equals VLOOKUP. I'm going to lock this, comma, and the table is this whole F4. Now we're trying to get tax from the previous bracket, so that's 5, comma, and 5. Approximate, I love it. I don't have to put that in. That's the default. Control Enter. And so if we look for this category right here, yes, it is 7250. Now, the way a tax table like this works is you have to figure out the tax from the previous bracket. So it means even though we are trying to figure out for this row 15%, right? 7250 has already been calculated from these first 2 brackets. So actually 2038 of our taxable earnings has already been taxed. So we need to go and get the tax rate, then figure out the excess over 2038, and then calculate our total tax. All right, so the tax rate. Well, you know what? I'm just going to copy this down and change the 5 because it's going to be 4. Oh, that's number formatting. I'm going to Control-Shift-Tilde, which is the keyboard for general. If you want to show it in percentage, you can. Amount already taxed. Now watch this. I'm going to be smart this time. I'm going to copy this down because amount already taxed is this column. I've already taxed 2038. Watch this. I'm going to copy it down and immediately point to my smart tag and say fill without formatting. And then change this to 1, 2. And there we go. Now, the amount that's taxed in this bracket, I'm taking my taxable earnings minus the amount that's already been taxed, 462. Now I take the 462 times my tax rate. That'll give me just the tax from this bracket. I'm going to round. I always get nervous when I have percentages and multiplying. I don't see any extraneous decimals here, though, but I'm going to be careful. And we'll say for income taxes, we're rounding to the dollar. Now, that just gives me just the amount for this bracket. The actual total amount will be the 69 plus the 72.50. And there's our 141.50. And what's so nice about this is you could put whatever you want. And it will calculate it. So it looks like it's going this one right here, right? There's the 28%, the tax from the previous brackets. Now, here's a challenge. How about instead of doing it in a bunch of cells, do it in all one cell? So you could come over here and copy this and delete and just do all of these calculations in a single cell. See if you can do that. That's your challenge. Now, I have a few videos at YouTube that show how to do that. I have a couple reference videos down here. This VLOOKUP function, beginner and advanced, 26 examples. This video actually has a bunch of examples that we did here. Slightly different presentation. But if you go to the 1 minute 18-second mark of this video, it shows you how to do that. And actually, I have a few other ones too. There's also a video if you want to learn more about that approximate match and that binary search. And there's even variable rate tables for commission, piecework, and tax examples, because those are hard lookup situations that come up a lot in accounting and finance and business. And they're all related to this kind of various percentages, and you need to take into account a bunch of different brackets. All right, so this first video for this week, we talked a lot about approximate and exact match. Next video, we'll see a few more VLOOKUP tricks. All right, see you next video.